Hey everybody, welcome to the new year, 2019, and welcome to the Reiki Challenge. This video is just going to be a bit of an overview of the practices that we're going to do this week. And so we're going to cover those three things, and then we're going to do a little reiju at the end. This little black tail and the occasional vocal responses here are from Mayette. She likes to help with my videos. I could put her in another room, but sometimes she has pretty good input, so I tend to let her just do her thing. So anyway, let's see here. So this challenge is for the Reiki Embodiment group, as I said, and the idea behind this challenge is that we're going to build a practice, a Reiki practice built up. And like most things, it takes time and repetition and consistency. So, and the number one thing that people have trouble with in Reiki practices is, one, knowing what to do, two, being consistent at it, and, just in general, just follow through, and that's true for a lot of things. And so, I know it's New Year's and everyone's got resolutions and, and a lot of times people start things and they don't finish things, but I know that if you do something for 30 days, that it'll become a habit and then it becomes easy. Even if you just do that habit for 2 minutes, that's better than not doing it at all. So that's kind of the focus here with this practice. None of these techniques, with the exception of one of them, which is a guided meditation. We'll talk about that in a minute. The other two techniques that you're doing this week they don't have to take 20 minutes. Now, that being said, the middle one, if you do it for longer, it's better than if you do it for shorter. But in the general purpose of thing, if you do it well in time, that's better than no time. So you can take as much time as you want. My advice to you is take as much time as you can. Start at the beginning with doing it 1 or 2, 3 or 4 minutes, and then go up from there. And it doesn't have to take a long time, So, and you will naturally want to do more as you begin to see the benefits, but it doesn't take a lot of work to see the benefit. And this is very simple stuff. But that being said, it's the most magical stuff, really, honestly. These two techniques alone from the traditional Japanese Reiki branches styles are the most powerful techniques in the whole entire system, honestly. Next to reiju, which we're going to do at the end, by the way. So if you thought, well, I can read this and skip this video, well, you can, but then you'll miss a nice reiju that I'm going to do here at the end. So, and I encourage you to hang out for that because I like doing reijus and I know people like getting them. So, in general, so hopefully that'll be something you stick around for in the end of the video. Anyway. So we're going to start this challenge, and these are practices you're going to continue doing, at least the first two here. There's one practice we're going to do, which I'm going to talk about when I get to that one. It's the third thing I'm going to talk about here in the video. It's called the Michael Sword technique, and it's a technique that's about 25 minutes long or so. It's a guided meditation. You're going to do that once per week. Now, it's important, and I'll talk a lot more about this in a second, that you pick a day that you can do that consistently every day. So like if you can do it at 3 o'clock on today, that's great. Well, not 3 o'clock today because you'd have to be in a different world, but you can do it tomorrow or Saturday or whatever day is good for you. It doesn't matter. Just whatever day that you pick, you want to try to stick, kind of make it an appointment that you do every week because it works on creating a certain kind of cleansing cycle in your life, and it's better if those cycles all happen and end at the same time. So because every time you do that session, you're going to get another cycle starting. So you kind of want those cycles to sort of start and end at the same time. You don't want to be like start one day on Tuesdays and then 2 weeks later you do it on a Friday, and so you're all mixed up there. It'll still work obviously that way, but it just makes it a lot less powerful for you personally to do it that way. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in a minute, but I want to teach the two daily practices that you're going to kind of do here. All right, so let's start this technique. So the first technique is going to be known as Kenyokyo. That's the Japanese word for it. It just means dry bathing. That's what those 2 words or 3 words translate into. And this is a very simple technique. I debated even showing it. I got some documents I posted into the Facebook group that basically go over this in word form, but here's what it looks like in video form. So what you're going to do is, initially, you're going to practice a little technique that is called focus, or the Japanese word for that is mokunin, but we're not going to worry about the Japanese word. We're just going to basically focus. So what you're going to do is close your eyes and bring your hands to your hara. Now, in the event you've never heard of that word, your hara is sort of your energetic center of your body from the Japanese perspective. or it's the center of your body from the physics perspective too, if you want to look at it that way. So the easiest way to find that is you just stick your thumb, with your hand facing the floor, and then you kind of put your hand right below your belly button. That's where your hara is. So it's basically your lower belly, basically. And so you're going to put your hands there, and what you're going to do basically is you're just going to basically focus on that area for a second and take a couple breaths. Just like that. And that's just to get you centered and focused before you do that. And you want to leave your mind's attention there as you move on and do this technique. And this technique is going to basically be, it's a cross-body technique, so it does a lot of things that this does. And basically this is just sort of taking you out of your other space of mind where you're all crazy and putting you into a more focused space. So all you're going to do basically is you're going to keep your mind, attention on your hara, and you're going to take your right hand, which may be backwards in the video, I have no idea, but this is my right hand. And what you're going to do is you're going to basically do a sweep from the shoulder down to the hip. And the first 3 moves are all just like that. So you're going to bring your right hand to your left shoulder, take a breath in from your hara, and then breathe out as you sweep down. Then you're going to do the same thing with your left hand on your right shoulder. And then you just repeat the left side one more time. And that's the first part of the technique. And then you can do the same thing, but with your arms. So you breathe in. And you're just doing the inside of your arm from your elbow down to your hands. And it's that simple. So I'm going to do it again without talking so you can kind of watch it. So and that's that. Kenyokyo. You can also do a YouTube video. There's a bunch of them out there. People doing this standing up and at a distance in dojos and all kinds of stuff. It's a very simple technique. It works in a very powerful way because it is restructuring your brain, because when you do cross polarity, things like that, it really helps to recenter your body and breaks up patterns. And it's a pattern interrupt, basically, from a psychological term. All right. And that's basically the first technique. And you just do that to start. And that's something you would just do once. Usually I do things like that at the beginning and end of my practice. I call that like the sandwich, sort of sandwich bread. Sort of said the first time I do it, it's to get me out of whatever I was doing. And then the second time is to sort of cement it all in. Because the idea is that you're going to be moving from your, quote, busy life into practice life. And then, you want to when you're done with the practice, you want to sort of download that and sort of save that file, if you will, or print it, or whatever metaphor you want to use. And that's kind of how I use the technique personally. So the second part of the technique, or practice this week, is going to be doing a technique known as Joshin Kokyoho. Now this is a very powerful practice, and it's a very simple practice. It's funny how that works. A lot of times the simplest things are the easiest things, and this is very easy practice as well. There are a lot of nuances to this technique and lots of subtle variations that you can put onto it. And I'm not going to discuss all of them right now because, quite honestly, until you've done this technique, I can talk about all the cool things that this does and where it can take you and what it can do, but it'd just be like all poppycock until you actually experience it. And this technique is a direct experience technique, so please do it. And do it for as long as you can or you want to or whatever. And you will see the benefits in your own life. You won't need me to tell you what they are. So it's a very simple technique. I'm going to talk about the words of it here just for a minute, and then I'm going to actually do it for about 2 minutes or so, maybe a couple minutes. Try not to make this video really super long. But once we know this technique, when I go to do the reiju at the end of the video, then you can go and do this while I am actually doing the reiju, and that's a great way to be in a space of receiving for the reiju. Okay, so what you're going to basically do with this technique is, at least with most of these techniques, you start with your hara, and this is a hara-based technique. So put your hands on your lower belly, and this is not really part of the technique. It's sort of the beginning part of the technique, but most people, once they get really good at feeling their hara, they won't do this teeny part. But basically, I started this way anyway. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your hands on your hara, and you're just going to breathe in and out. And the idea is you should feel your hands being moved by your belly. And if you're not, then you're breathing in your head, or you're breathing in your chest, or you're breathing not in your hara, because this is the whole purpose of this technique, both in this part and further on in the technique, is to be breathing in and out of your hara. So if you're not feeling your belly press upon your hands, then focus on doing that first. So what you're going to do in the technique, Joshin Kokuho, is you're going to take it, which means purifying breath, by the way. You're just going to basically take a couple breaths, and you should be able to feel your hand move. It's a little tricky for me to do it because I'm trying to talk and breathe at the same time, but you got the idea. And once you've got about 3, 4, 5, 6 breaths, whatever, until you got a good strong connection there, that's the first part. So that's the first step. Okay, and then the second step is you want to visualize sort of yourself sort of sitting in the universe. You can visualize yourself sitting on a beach, whatever, you can visualize yourself sitting in your room. You can not visualize anything and just sort of feel this directly. You can also even skip the visualizations and just know that this is happening. Lots of different ways depending on how your brain processes data. It doesn't really matter. The idea is that you want to basically connect with the universe at large, and then you're going to breathe in the light of the universe. Which you can see that as, white light or something like that, and you're going to breathe that energy in on the in-breath, and you're going to breathe, and I'm talking, obviously not doing this, and you're going to breathe that into the hara where you have been, you're not going to do this with your hand. I'm just doing that for demonstration purposes, and you're going to bring that down into your hara. And then there's a moment between inhale and exhale where what you're going to do is you're going to kind of pause there for a second. I mean, you're not going to hold your breath really, but there's a moment between when you're breathing in, there's a pause in there between those two things. And in that pause, what you're going to allow that energy to do, which you breathed in to your hara, is you're going to see that expand and grow as far as you can get it to go in the 1 or 2 half a seconds or whatever in between those breaths change. And you're just going to see that grow and expand. And then breathe out. So breathe in, expand, breathe out. Breathe in, expand, breathe out, breathe in. And that's all you're doing. That's simply it. This is a super simple technique. But, it's easy to get lost in this because your brain will be like, oh, Bucky, and you just want to, of course, let that go and focus on the breath. And the thing about so cool about this technique is that you can always come right back to it at any point. I got a little bit out of focus there. I'm blurry. Anyway, too much energy, I guess. So, let's do it together for a second. So, focus on your hara. Your breath should be moving your hands. Breathe in. Expand. And then just repeat that. Breathe in. Expand. Breathe out. All right. There we go. Now it got me back in focus. Sorry about that, in case you were being pedantic about that. So that's pretty simple. So to recap, start by breathing in and out of your hara until you can feel your hands expand and contract. And once you got a good strong focus on your hara, then you move into the second part, the actual part of the technique. And the technique is just to breathe in the light of the universe to your hara, in between breath in and out, expand that, and then breathe out and then continue that expansion and so forth. And just repeat the breath in and out as you go for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, whatever, as long as you can, or as long as you want to. Either one, both work. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's Joshin Kokuho. And there's some other little details that I'm going to throw in here later, but right now I'm just trying to keep it simple. And if you're in a in a crunch, and you're just feeling a little stressed, I mean, you can actually just start the technique just by breathing in your hara. That alone, that beginning part, that very first section of just connecting to your hara is a very powerful technique. And I had originally thought of just teaching that part of it in the beginning, but it occurred to me that it might be a little bit too simplistic and some people might be able to. So basically, so to sum up, that's basically what I've just done is those two techniques we've just went over your daily practice, basically, or your new daily practice. So Joshin Kokyu, okay, and Kenyokyo, excuse me, and then Joshin Kokyu, all right, and that is just focus on your hara. Once you got a connection, breathe in, expand, breathe out, breathe in, expand, breathe out. It's very simple. All right, and then the third technique is the Michael Sword technique, and what that technique is going to do is it is going to go into your unconscious mind, and it is using a very special part of one of the symbols in the Reiki tradition that you learn in Okuden, if you don't know it already. It uses a part of that energy spectrum that works with that Reiki to uncover these things that are unrelated. So the idea is that you can come into your unconscious and you can figure out what kind of stuff is lurking in there. Lurking, it's maybe not quite like that, but it could be like that. Stuff that's hidden from your conscious mind that is, impacting your current life. Because a lot of times, we have issues and conditioning and thoughts and feelings and things that are part of our unconscious mind that we are unaware. And in fact, actually, you can have lots of different kinds of things. You can be aware of something consciously, but not aware that it's actually part of a problem. You can be unconsciously unconscious of it totally, which means that you have no awareness of it, and and things like that. So there's different, and what this technique does is it merges your conscious and your unconscious mind with respect to whatever issue you decide you want to work on. And that is going to be the mystery that only you can solve for your life, because I can't tell you what technique you're going to want to do, or what, not technique, but what issues you want to work on. And I would encourage you to be careful with what issues you tackle, because this is a deep and powerful technique designed to create and eliminate, not create, but to eliminate those connections. It's a cord cutting technique, basically. It's a guided meditation. I've already recorded it. It's got music and stuff. The link will be in the below down. It'll be on the Facebook group. I may make a video and post it up here too on YouTube, but I haven't decided yet. Because right now it's just an audio, so I'd have to make a video, and it's, it takes a minute, so it doesn't really matter. But the audio is already available, so it's up there. So you want to pick something that's important, but you don't want to go too deep. You don't want to say like, what's keeping me from being an unrealized non-dual being? I mean, that would be a great topic, but it would probably be a huge topic, and one that would require a lot of follow-up, and it may be a bit too much. So start with something easy, so things like, like maybe you have an old injury that you keep sort of always doing it again. Like we all kind of have, sometimes we have things like that. Like, why do I keep hitting my right foot all the time on stuff? That's a great topic, because it's probably something significant, but whatever. You can also do relationship stuff, like you can also ask, what can I do to move on from something that you've gotten rid of in your life, or you can even use this for habits if you want to try to get rid of a specifically bad habit or something like that. This technique can be used for that, to help get rid of the unconscious patterns that are supporting it. But that's even be interesting. And the idea here is you're going to be doing, this for 4 or 5 weeks, where we're going to do this once a week. So pick a day that you can keep the same time frame on. And then you're going to repeat it. So you may get all the awareness that you need from the first session. It's not usually the way it works, but sometimes it can. If you pick a shallow enough, I hate to use the word shallow, but if you pick a topic that doesn't have as much life-altering stuff in it, then that is easier to do. You can do a one-off technique. You could even, if you really want to, take it easy and kind of slide through on this technique, you could just look at, releasing stuff from your past week or something very simple. Maybe you had somebody cut you off in traffic, or your principal at your kid's school or something. You got into a big fight or whatever, and you're like, what the heck, why did I get into a big fight about that? You can even pick you can even go over anger or compassion. But the idea is you're going to make a topic, and it's pretty simple. So the meditation will take you through all the work. You just have to basically decide what the topic is. And so the topics need to be in the form of a question. why do I feel X? Why does this keep happening? What is behind this? That kind of stuff, or what is keeping me from a goal that you want. That's usually how I kind of focus when I try to use this technique for myself. I try to sort of focus on, if I'm asking the question of why does this keep happening to me, which is a good question, but the problem is why isn't as important as what I need to do to get past it. So I tend to try to phrase mine as, how does this, whatever thing I'm trying to get rid of or feel is a bad thing, help me move towards whatever the ultimate goal would be. So instead of trying to find out why people keep behaving in certain ways, which is useful only to teach me how to do it again, which if I'm trying to not do it again, then that's not a very helpful thing, right? So whereas how does this bad thing that keeps happening over and over and over again, whatever it is, help me get to being whole or being happy or being, happiness is not a really good goal, but you get the idea. So, and oneness and whatnot. So that's how you do it. So that's very simple. And you're going to do that, you said, just once a week. And you don't have to do anything other than listen to the video and come up with a topic. So, and this is conditioning. So, it's up to you to determine what conditioning you have or what you think you may have. And that's a perfectly good topic too. What can I do to get the most out of this technique is a great way to start this technique also. Sort of just let the universe sort of bring it up to your mind. Now, here's the thing. It's going to bring stuff up. And it's going to bring stuff up in your actual life. Okay? It's not just going to happen in this 20-minute little meditation exercise. Okay? It's going to come up in your whole life, through your life. And it's utilizing this idea of the 21-day cleansing cycle, which there's a document up there that kind of outlines that a little bit too, and I posted in the group. And I'll post it below too, I guess, if you want. So the idea here is that it's going to bring up this 21-day cleansing cycle. And the way that works is that it's going to take you through 3 weeks. I call them the macro weeks. So the first week's all about you and how it affects you and your life and your internal level. And then the second week is all about the other people in your life, So that's your environment, your family, your friends, your social circles, all that stuff. And then the third week is kind of how those two come together and integrate. So, and that's kind of each week is going to be like that. So you do the session and then it's going to start that cycle. And now here's the thing that's really fun. Each day you're in a chakra world, or I'm going to use the word realm because that's an easier way to word it. So each chakra kind of has a realm of influence, like your root chakra is kind of about, your power, your physical presence, your vitality. It's very, primal, it doesn't have a lot of high mental content to it. And so your first week's kind of about that. So if you were to ask a topic that's mostly physical health stuff, you might find that there's some stuff in that might relate to, my this is that or whatever. And stuff might come up in that first day even that might be very significant that kind of helps you work through it. And then of course the second day, boom, you move up to your second chakra, which is going to bring you up to, intimacy and connection and all that stuff and sexuality and things like that. It'll bring you into the second chakra. And then, of course, the next day will take you up to the third chakra, which is then going to bring you into, your ego and your sort of sense of self and some of the things that others think in the fourth day, fifth day, so forth goes off. And then you start over at the next week. So the first week is all about yourself through the chakra journey. And the second week is all about your thing. And I know that in some of the traditional Japanese circles, they don't really talk about chakras at all because they work with a more simplified sort of Japanese mindset, which is you sort of have 3 centers. But the fact of the matter is that this 21-day cycle works. And for many, many years, I would see my students go through a very similar process over and over and over again, utilizing this 21-day cycle. And then it's kind of just sort of got, the Japanese don't really talk about it that way. So maybe it's just a Western psychological model that works combining the Hindi idea. Maybe it's all totally made up. I have no idea. But I can tell you right now that I've taken lots and lots and lots of people. I mean, a lot of my professional business is utilizing this technique in practice. with people. I mean, I do the guided meditation with them in live, just very similar. Its sessions are a little bit longer than they are in the meditation I recorded, but it's the same thing. And so, and it never fails. Someone will go, "Oh my God, I was having this crazy day, blah, 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 and all this came up stuff, and I had to look at this, and I couldn't get this out of my mind." And I'll be like, "Okay, what day was it?" And they'll be like, "Oh, it was a Wednesday." And I'll be like, "Okay, we had our session on Tuesday," and I'll count out the chakra days, and I'll be like, "Okay, so basically what we're looking at is it was about this day, about this chakra body or heart chakra or whatever. Usually it was heart chakra days, or the days that people have the most interesting stuff a lot of times." which makes total sense, of course. And they'd be like, oh my God, that is so perfect. And so like the proof of this has sort of come out in the pudding, as they say. So, it's very simple. And then, the next week when so do it the 1 week, and then the next week you're going to do it again. And then what makes this technique work is that you're multiplying your cleansing 21 days. So, you start a 21-day cycle on day 1, and then you come back day 7, you do it again. So you're going 2 weeks now, and then you come back and do day 3, and then you're doing 3 weeks, and you get the idea. The original protocol was to do 7 of these techniques on whatever issue the person wanted to work with. And they might change the topic slightly depending on what comes up. Like, like I had a client once that he came in because he was having physical heart issues, like literally physical heart issues. And he knew that Reiki was very effective for that because his mother had used Reiki. So he thought he would learn Reiki and get some Reiki done as well. And it did work really, really well for him. First session, he asked about that very physical thing. Why do I have this physical heart thing? And of course, now mind you, it's a genetic defect that he has. So of course, you can imagine there was some family stuff that came up as a result of that. And eventually he got to a point where he realized that part of the reason why he was having some symptoms, well, besides the obvious genetic problem there, that is a physical issue with his heart, he found out that, he was unhappy in his marriage. Now, did he just suddenly become unhappy in his marriage? No, of course not. He just became aware of that was actually a part of the problem for him, and he really just wasn't happy in that scenario. And then, he began to look at that and realize that he was not dealing with that emotion. He just was sort of kind of going through the motions and whatnot. And this is all stuff he did on his own, and then eventually he made some changes in his life and, changed his job, got a divorce, and then really, became very, very happy and, and lived happily ever after, so to speak. And that's kind of like, so sometimes, when you start these kinds of things, and it wasn't the first day, but he sort of changed his topic a little bit as he went on, because it started off as, hey, I got this heart thing, but then it was like, well, what's really at work here was a much deeper sort of emotional thing that was impacting his physical heart, obviously. And then, of course, once he kind of got through that, did his physical defect just magically go away? No, of course not, because this is something that requires typically a heart transplant or whatever to fix, so he couldn't do that. Well, I guess he could have, but he didn't. He wasn't in that kind of a position. So anyway, it doesn't really matter. So that's the way this works. So, well, I've been talking just long enough that it's too long probably, but that's all right. So to sum up, and I'm going to do a quick reiju here. Kegyoku, the dry bathing. Joshin Kokyoho, breathe in and out of your hara with visualization of light coming in and expanding. And Michael's sword technique, pick 1 day a week that you can commit to a certain time and place and go through that. And all the links to where these are will be on the Reiki group or whatever. So you can just find, once you just download the meditation and you can do it, obviously. You won't need to watch this video. And the next week I'll have another video about next week's practices, which who knows what those are going to be. I do, but that'll be the mystery. All right, so, and that covers the practice video. So now I'm going to do a quick little reiju. So what you need to do, and what I need to do, is probably scoot back myself a little bit. There we go. Okay, so what you need to do on your end, if you just close your eyes and focus on going into your hara like we just learned a minute ago. And just be open to receiving that which you need. come back and gasho, which is a great way to end your practice. And thank you all for watching this video and receiving the reiju. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, complaints, no, just kidding. Well, maybe. I'm open to that too, I suppose. Feel free to comment, like, share, etc. Talk about it in the Facebook group. And thank you very much. You all have a great day. Happy New Year's, everybody.